Good evening and welcome to this special broadcast on the day that the former Home Minister of India, Mr. P Chidambaram, has released his new book, Speaking Truth to Power. The release of this book comes at a very interesting time. It comes when we are just over a year away from the next general election. But if rumours and speculation are to be believed, then we could be seeing a general election in some months from now. It's a time when India is at a crossroads, ideologically, politically, economically, where so many issues are being debated currently, whether it is on the state of the economy, joblessness, rural distress, on where we are headed ideologically and even politically, where our political systems are also now coming up for debate.
So let me begin by asking you, do you think that the opposition's voice in these times when the media or a large section of the media is reluctant to fulfill its role in a democracy, is the opposition's voice being heard loudly enough?
No, I don't think it's being heard loudly enough. The only reason why I was able to write for 156 weeks is because I don't watch television news. I think without watching television news, if people spoke and wrote more, the opposition's voice will be heard louder. I think it's a great shame that the fourth estate, which should be in a position where it is opposing and exposing the government, instead of that, sections of the fourth estate have become, I don't want to use strong words.
Please do.
Have become so, shall we say, compliant, so docile. The best examples are from the animal world, but I don't want to do that.
But I'll ask Shekhar to talk about that just a little bit, because Shekhar, as an editor, it's actually sad in a democracy when not enough opposing points of view are reflected in our media, and they're not. Very often you now see what the opposition is saying is on page 13 of a newspaper, or is a little wrap of pictures on television. Is that healthy for a democracy?
I think two things. First, when you said you didn't want to use strong language, I thought you were worrying about using the word prostitute. That's a term of endearment now. It's not strong language, so please go ahead and use it. Everybody does. I think it's not the job of the media to provide a voice to the opposition. It's for the opposition to bring issues of interest to the media. And it's a problem that the Congress party, it's a terminal problem with the Congress party, if I may say so. Because whenever Congress party is in power, it becomes very lazy. A lot of its top people, I'll say this to this audience, are busy cutting deals with the government of the day because they have many other interests. So I've had experience of running newspapers with BJP in power and Congress in power. When Congress is in power, BJP is always on its toes. It's bringing you stuff. It's bringing you scandals. It's bringing you stories. It's bringing you not statements. It's bringing you, after all, 2G, Commonwealth Games. Some of the scandals were exaggerated tens of times over. But BJP did the homework on them. When Congress is in the opposition, even when you go and give the Congress something, by way of breaking a story, because I am out on a long weekend, right? Congress is a very lazy party in the opposition. So for Congress now to blame the media, I will say go take a walk, right? Congress people simply do not do their homework when they are out of power, and I will repeat, they go back to their businesses. Very few Congress people do, and in fact, well, you are in a, this is exception, but if writing a column is homework, I'm sorry, it is not. Because somebody has to come to the media and say that government has made these claims about these jobs. I am giving you, I'm not even saying a scam or something. Opposition has to bring stuff to the media. Don't put the monkey on the media's back. Congress, opposition simply doesn't make news. So,
is it really simple as that?
I don't think. No, I think.
The reason I interrupt interrupt is that there are often claims that the government makes which are not even punctured by basic fact-checking by the media anymore. I mean, you have wonderful news sites like India Spend or Alt News or Boom Fact Check that take a claim that the government makes and puncture it with some basic data and research. Hand on your heart, do you think the media is really doing its job today in questioning the government?
Hand on my heart. Who is the media? NDTV is the media, you question it. Indian Express, The Hindu, these are big papers, they question it. Business Standard questions it. So I think we get, see, when you paint the wall, it visits home. Right? You look at 2 Commando comic channels every evening and you think the media is finished. Media is not finished. Commando comic channel. There is civilized media. So I think this debate has gone too soon on the media, and maybe I'm sounding like I'm on the wrong side. I should be whining and complaining. I would say that I've never felt, I've run a paper, I've been on myself, I'm trying to set up something new. There are pressures always, but I've never felt that there is such pressure and fear now that I have a story to tell and I cannot tell. I think if any journalist says that I'm not able to tell because I have fear, he's either a liar or a coward.
I don't know if many journalists out there would necessarily agree with that, but Shashi Tharoor, Shekhar Gupta made an interesting point about the Congress being a lazy opposition. Is there some truth to that?
I personally don't think so, because obviously there are many colleagues here who I know are outspoken on a daily basis in and out of Parliament. And certainly we do feel that sometimes the points we make in Parliament don't get the kind of reflection in the media as the most anodyne statements coming out of the government. That may be partly a structural issue. There is a certain reverential attitude to those in power that seems to be inbuilt, whereas the opposition's job is to oppose, and therefore you can discount what they're saying. That sort of attitude is implicit in much of the media's coverage. But where perhaps we should be doing more is not at the level of Mr. Chidambaram's book or my own articles or the speeches of many of those sitting in this hall today, but maybe a little more in the streets. Because perhaps if we were galvanizing the public on issue after issue, the media would have to sit up and take notice. And at the moment, that may be the one thing we should be doing more of.
So what's stopping you?
Well, I mean, we're getting organized, getting up there. Elections to some degree do play a role in this. When the party was focused on Gujarat, it was doing a lot in Gujarat. And it was all over the place, tremendous public turnout. Everybody was out there. But at that time, in the rest of the country, perhaps there wasn't quite that much going on. Partly it's about grassroots organization, which is uneven across the country. In my state of Kerala, we have a Congress party that's very active, and not only for elections, but between elections. I'm not sure that's always true of every district office in every part of the country. So there are things we can do better.
Dr. Roy, your initial thoughts on that? Who's controlling the narrative today? Is it still largely being controlled by the government, or is something changing?
No, I mean, it's difficult for me to say who's controlling the narrative, but I think the general proposition that we need much more considered discussion of policies and different options and different viewpoints, that's very important. I don't think it is happening in some newspapers, as Shekhar was saying. And I must share the perception that at least there are very few TV channels that I watch. I watch yours, but I don't watch the others. And I think on television, it's not just a question of bias, it's almost the technique that they now adopt of having the entire screen broken up into a matrix of 7 different boxes, 3 of which have people wanting to intervene. The other 3 have people continuously intervening. I mean, it's not conducive to any kind of thoughtful absorption of events. So I do think we do need a better way of conducting a public debate in which more points of view get across.
That intervening is a polite word.
Yeah, the usual message of some of the anchors is don't talk when I'm interrupting.
Or some say just shut up, which is far less polite. But since we're in election year, so let me ask a few more political questions. Mr. Chidambaram, I mean, you've talked about the fact that the BJP is a very confrontationist ruling party and that it's extremely difficult to be able to have a dialogue with the ruling party. That itself does a disservice to democracy. But does it also do a disservice to democracy if the opposition cannot come together and unite on key issues that the country faces? Even today, the opposition is all over the place. Where is that one voice that is trying to seize the narrative and give people an alternative?
So that's not possible in a multi-party democracy. Please understand, barring the Congress party, every other opposition party in this country is a single state party. It's not even a regional party. They are single state parties. One or two may have had ambitions to become two state parties or three state parties. They failed. When they are single state parties, their agenda is rather limited. Yes, they send members to parliament, but that doesn't give that member of parliament the freedom and the amplitude to go beyond the limits of his party leadership, which is sitting in that state. It was very difficult for the Congress party to bring all opposition parties onto one platform on every issue. Some issues, many will join. Many issues, some will join. But I think it's ambitious to expect that single state parties, which are almost 7 or 8 parties in this country which rule states, will come onto the Congress platform on every single issue. It's not possible.
CPM will object slightly to your characterization. They're a three-state party, right? But still.
Well, when I said single, you can say singular includes plural there.
How do we hope to come together to fight millennial voting in 2019?
We will. We will come together to fight elections in 2019 by some kind of a broad understanding. I think, in my experience, the party that is strongest in each state, see, the Congress and the BJP are directly pitted against each other only in about 7 states. Directly pitted against each other as the only 2 contestants. In all of the states, it's the Congress shares the opposition space with somebody else, like in Maharashtra, or there is a regional party which is stronger than the Congress, like in Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Orissa, Bengal, Tripura. There are state parties which are stronger than the Congress. So there will be some kind of a pre-election understanding in many states. There will be a post-election understanding in many states.
Just if you just elaborate on that, how is that going to work? Because at the moment, it really does seem the opposition is all over the place. Akhilesh Yadav says he doesn't want to ally with the Congress. The CPM says it doesn't want to have anything to do with the Congress. The NCP appears to have reservations about Rahul Gandhi, and so Congress had to tell the NCP yesterday and Sharad Pawar that no, don't forget Sonia Gandhi is still our leader in Parliament. How do you get over all these contradictions? I mean, the general election could happen in 6 months. I mean, according to rumors, it could even happen in 3 months.
Yeah, these rumors are very interesting. That may be a subject we should pump the journalists on. Tell us what you're hearing. But on this, frankly, a lot of this is yet to take place. There are conversations happening. They're above my pay grade, so I can't speak with a great deal of inside knowledge on what alliances are being struck. But some of these are fairly evident from common sense observations, that in some places, alliances or understandings will indeed be possible, but they may not be the same ones that happened during the previous election. Things have changed, things have evolved. I think in every case there will be fresh discussions. Once the agreements are reached, the main thing is where the BJP is the big party in a particular state, the opposition will see for itself that it's in its interest not to undermine the BJP's vote. Where a regional party is the strongest party in a state, and the BJP and the Congress are on, if you like, a more even keel, then you would have a different sort of approach. In the case of Bengal, for instance, where Trinamool is clearly the 190-pound gorilla on the beach, there are 3 smaller parties which will have to figure out their understandings. And clearly the BJP is not going to find allies amongst the other 2, but the other 2 may well want to consider, do they ally with each other? Do they go it on their own? Does the Congress, for example, see an affinity to their old colleague who is now Trinamool? So these questions all have to be answered. If you're implying in your question that there are greater contradictions between some opposition parties than would make alliances possible, you're objectively right. But the fact is that nonetheless, there's nothing like, as Dr. Johnson said, hanging in the morning concentrates the mind wonderfully. If you don't come to an understanding and you know the result could be 5 years more in the opposition wilderness, you might well come to an understanding, even if you
Shekhar, is that
difference.
going to be enough to take on Narendra Modi? And for what it's worth, a couple of recent surveys have shown that while anti-incumbency is hitting the government and even the Prime Minister's own popularity is declining, he's still overwhelmingly popular. Is this enough to take him on?
Well, it's a year and a half left to the elections. Momentum is very important. You have to see which direction is the momentum in. You've seen over the past 6-8 months that momentum is not in the direction where Mr. Modi might want it to be. So there is an opening available there. But the opposition, see, just coming together doesn't mean that arithmetically votes will get added. Because when this opposition comes together without a leader, without an agenda, so BJP will immediately then respond by saying one more khichdi. And khichdi's have a bad track record in our country. Now UPA was put together in 2004, not because it was planned as UPA, because numbers had a certain logic and a certain number of people just a couple of years after Gujarat riots came together and set up an unlikely government. 2009, I have to say, in Dr. Singh's presence.
That's because when the nation is sick, it is given khichdi.
Well, yes and no. So you can try that a second time. I dare you to use that line in an election campaign. When BJP says, even in a TV debate, you are giving a khichdi, say when the nation is sick, we'll give you a khichdi. You will save your own seat, right? But a lot of your party men will. So 2009 UPA won because Dr. Singh ran a very good government. He ran a very good government. He made major changes and improvements in many areas, which proved many skeptics like us wrong. We thought with the left there, they will not be able to do it. Now, if you go back and you don't have coherence in what you are doing, then I think this kind of opposition unity actually will play to Mr. Modi's strengths. You have to have common agendas earlier. You have to show much better results in the state elections that come up now. You have to convince a large enough number of people that these guys can come back and rule. And also, frankly, this is Lutyens Delhi. Mr. Modi, I think he came to power saying he'll destroy Lutyens Delhi. He's done nothing of the sort. He's just replaced an earlier Lutyens with its own Lutyens. So unless you can convince this bureaucracy, NIA, CBI, ED, everybody, that there might be a change and you should not be doing certain things that you are doing, it will be very difficult. And they will only be convinced if they see the possibility of a change.
I'm disagreeing with you, but what is the opposition's narrative? If I was a voter today,
We have
I
heard
would ask, what is the opposition?
See,
Firstly,
what
who is
Shekhar
the opposition?
is saying-
What is it that they're offering me that is different?
what Shekhar is saying, practically everybody said pre-Gujarat, you can't get your act together. You can't challenge Mr. Modi in his den. But what happened in Gujarat? But for a few mistakes that we committed, in Gujarat, the Congress could have formed the government. Our analysis shows in 12 polling booths, just 12 polling booths out of about 50,000 polling booths. If in 2017 we had got the same vote as we got in 2014 Parliament, where we got very low votes, we would have won 5 more seats. If NCP and Congress had joined together, NCP would have got 1 more and we would have got 1 more. So it is a pretty close election, But don't write off the Congress party, or don't write off the ability of the people to join hands in defeating BJP candidates in specific constituencies. Wait for the Rajasthan election and wait for the Madhya Pradesh election. At the moment, you will say that we don't have an organization which is powerful enough to take on the RSS. But we didn't have one in Gujarat either. So I think it's coming together. If we can quicken the process, we can make it stronger. But I'm absolutely confident the process will come together and we will pose a formidable challenge to the BJP in 2019 or whenever elections are held.
So I'm making a distinction between states like Gujarat, which is essentially Congress versus BJP, or Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh, And Karnataka, yes and no, because Gowda is there. And putting a larger opposition unity together, because that can
It's
look
the challenge.
so chaotic that it worries people.
I do want to, since we're talking about elections, Dr. Ahluwalia, just ask you first. Your thoughts on this entire debate on simultaneous polls. You think it's a good idea or a terrible one?
Well, I'm not an expert on this, and I mean, many people think that there's a kind of neatness to the idea that, you know, you get it all done together. I'm not sure, for example, what would happen if you had a poll and then a particular government fell. Would you have another poll, or would you say, no, the thing isn't working, but you will carry on with a dysfunctional legislature? So, I mean, I share the view that we have far too many elections. I mean, it's quite ridiculous, actually. Partly because every local election becomes a national issue nowadays. So many people that I talk to abroad tell me that isn't it very odd, because whenever we hear of India, whatever is happening is being conditioned by some local election somewhere. That's the problem. But you know, whether you can solve that, you need to ask constitutional experts. Actually, our principal author is the best person to respond. I was told that it's not easy to do unless you were to override this basic issue, that governments may fall in states, and what are you going to do then?
Mr. Chidambaram, would you like to take that? On simultaneous elections, it's being really sold very hard by the
Not
Prime
under the
Minister.
present constitution. The Constitution of India does not give a fixed term to any government. So unless you amend the constitution, you cannot have simultaneous election. Germany has elections in states at different times. They have a national election, and Germany's provinces have elections at different times. They had one 2 months ago, they had one 4 months ago. So in a parliamentary democracy, especially when we have 30 states, in a parliamentary democracy, under the present constitution, you cannot have simultaneous election. You could artificially construct an appearance of a simultaneous election by preponing some, postponing some. But you can do that maybe with parliament election in 5 or 6 states. How can you do it for 30 states? No state government, central government has a fixed term under this constitution. And what if a government falls tomorrow? Will you put it under president's rule for 4 years? It can't be done. This is another of these election jumlas. No, one nation, one tax was a jumla. Now one nation, one election is a jumla.
Shashi Tharoor, your quick thoughts on that. I mean, the Prime Minister is calling for a debate on this. Is it worth debating? I mean, or is it just a non-starter?
No, there are very good objections that both Montek and Mr. Chidambaram have raised. These are practical issues, because in a parliamentary system, each government in every state depends on a majority in the assembly. If as a result of a party split or a change of allegiance or whatever, that assembly majority changes, what happens? The glib answer we're getting is that they would have to, you could not bring a government down without having the votes to create an alternative government. But again, that may not always be practically possible. I mean, we've seen this in our own country on many occasions when people have in fact abandoned a government they had begun supporting. It's happened not that long ago at Bihar. Now there they were able to constitute an alternative government. But what happens in situations where you can't? If you can't do it, then as Mr. Chidambaram asks, are we going to have president's rule for the remaining 5 years? It's going to be undemocratic if that were to happen. So various answers have to be given. I think before this jumla is offered, as it were, one needs to have the proposition fleshed out. But certainly there is no doubt that having elections every 6 months can be distracting. We have a very draconian code of conduct approach where a number of things cannot be announced during the pendency of a state election. For example, a central government policy which would affect everybody in the country will also affect a state that's going to the polls and therefore has to be held in abeyance. These are things that are not terribly efficient. So an argument can be made that having frequent and multiple elections is inefficient, ties down the administration, delays development. Those arguments can be made, but then there have to be credible answers to the obvious objections as to how this would work within our present system.